It is one of the most disgusting intelligence operations, I think, in United States intelligence history, rivaling some of the things, eventually that led to the death of President Kennedy. And the thing is around this time is just like Kennedy, we all know the truth. We know that this document released by the Trump administration is complete bullshit. And I guess that maybe, just like with the Kennedy assassination, they expect us to just get over it in a period of time. And I genuinely think it's incumbent on anybody who was either supportive of the president, any United States citizen, to say no. We demand absolute and total transparency on this case, and particularly of these government officials. Do not use your platform to enrich yourself on these podcast platforms and constantly talk about Epstein and the Epstein files, eventually assume office, change on a dime, and expect us to trust you. That is not how this works. No. And in particular, in that document, I think it's one of the most disgusting documents ever released by the United States government, because it said there was no blackmail, we're not releasing this information. Kash Patel has this new line about how we're not going to re-victimize women. Ask the Epstein victims themselves. They have been begging for this information to come to light, specifically to implicate the powerful men that victimized them and through which they were, they were basically used for trafficking purposes to ensnare them in this high-level U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence operation, probably run in conjunction. And the trail of this entire thing it enrages me. It actually enrages me as an American.
I don't think you're alone. And I do think, as someone who voted for the president, campaigned for the president a lot, I'm not attacking the president, but I think even people who are fully on board with, the bulk of the MAGA agenda are like, this is too much, actually.
Yes.
I'm saying that with love, and I hope that they're listening. Because I think this threatens to blow up the whole thing. But let's just back up a little bit and just pick at some of the inconsistencies here. So you're saying that Pam Bondi said on camera, we have a client list.
On the White House lawn.
I've seen the client list.
Yes.
And then yesterday she's saying there's no client list.
There's no client list. And there was no systematic blackmail. That actually might be the most preposterous line in the document.
But it doesn't make any sense. So they've said that there were thousands of young people, in some cases minors, underage, children, sexually victimized. Are they saying that Epstein single-handedly had sex with all? Because actually, for whatever it's worth, I don't think anyone I've never seen anyone make the claim that Epstein had sex with anybody.
Yes, that's right. Well, a lot of these allegations revolve around group activities, and they around masseuse and being, look, the way that Dershowitz and others would claim it is I kept my underwear on and it was all very above the board massage information. There's that famous photo of Bill Clinton in the airport terminal with one of these young victims who herself says she was a victim of the Epstein entire machine. So you're exactly right. So for these thousands of women, were they victimized entirely by Ghislaine Maxwell and by Jeffrey Epstein? Because, by the way, that's not even what the Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein court documents and other things that we already knew that were in the public information. That's not what they say. That's not what the testimony of the victims of these people say. And so, again, even this client list thing, and I do think people can go down the rabbit hole too much and think that there is, as there's no ledger, as in had sex with so-and-so and we, because of that, supported Israel. That's not how it works.
So the term client list itself is misleading.
It's misleading because really what we want is a full list of the victims, of the people who flew on the flight logs. But the most important is the money. And I think a lot of people actually miss that in the Epstein story. Jeffrey Epstein came to power largely because he worked at Bear Stearns and effectively was like a high finance money laundering expert. That's effectively what we can learn from his background. That's how he came involved with Leon Black. Leon Black was one of the most powerful men in New York. This is the head of the Apollo Group. He paid him $170 million through various shell corporations for tax advice. And when he was caught doing that, he was said, actually, it wasn't even useful because all the tax advice was actually in the public domain. So what? Leslie Wexner in the 1991, I believe, signed full power of attorney over to Jeffrey Epstein. He was one of the richest men in America. I think he was the richest man in Ohio at that time. Jeffrey Epstein becomes the head of the Wexner Foundation, funnels some $2.5 million to Ehud Barak, the former former Israeli prime minister. I'm putting these things out there because I want people to know that the money is an integral part of the operation, and to the extent that the sex trafficking and all of that is linked, they are fused together because they were used primarily by the intelligence community. Both Epstein was a conduit of high stakes money laundering for things like, not Iran-Contra specifically, but let's say like funneling arms from Israel to Iran. This was also how he met eventually Robert Maxwell and became ensnared with his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell. The money laundering is actually more key to his intelligence
arms
rules.
From Israel to Iran?
Well, this was a key part of the Maxwell story. Robert Maxwell is a very sketchy character, Ghislaine Maxwell's father. People focus on the tabloid. That's actually not all what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is the fact that he's this Czechoslovakian Orthodox Jew who escapes from the Nazis. He eventually becomes a highly decorated soldier. Actually, I think he won the second highest medal in the UK for his operations during World War II. From that point forward, becomes very, very enmeshed with the Zionist community inside of the UK and propping up the newly formed state of Israel. From that point forward, he basically serves as a high stakes, almost an entity in and of itself. That's the way that Daryl Cooper has described him, is like a sovereign wealth fund almost, which with together brokers all kinds of cutout deals, between Israel and Iran. And actually, Epstein himself, when he was just 28 years old, flew on a private jet, I believe, to the Pentagon with somebody who we know is directly linked to these, previous intelligence operations and funneling money and weapons into many of these conflicts. So this stretches back decades, and that's a very, very important part of the story. So please just do not tell me that there's no part of a systematic blackmail campaign. It's so preposterous, and it actually just makes me want to tear my hair out. And I guess the only good news is that, just like with the Kennedy assassination, we do all know the truth.
So we want to brag, but this has got to be the most pro-dog podcast on the entire internet. They're almost always dogs, actually, just off camera. So dogs are non-negotiable. Dogs are the best, and people who love dogs really, really love them. We can relate. And so for that reason, we are thrilled to announce a new partner called Dutch Pet. It's the fastest growing telehealth service for your pets. It's on a mission to create affordable, quality veterinary care at any time, no matter where you are. They'll get your beloved pet what they need, and they do it at a high speed. And by the way, if you ever brought your dog to the vet, the dog doesn't like it. They can smell the darkness sometimes. It's true. Sometimes you have to go to the vet, but if you can avoid it, you should, and you want to. And Dutch.com has vets who can treat over 150 animal conditions with just 10 minutes on the phone. You never have to leave home. You never have to scare or upset your dog. No wasted time. You don't have to wait weeks for an in-office appointment, and you don't waste money. Unlimited visits and follow-ups for no extra cost. Free shipping on all products for up to 5 pets. Membership starts as little as $11 per month, and Dutch.com saves most customers nearly $1,000 a year. We use it. It's awesome as dog owners. It sounds too good to be true, probably, but it's absolutely real. Visit Dutch.com/Tucker to learn more. Use the code Tucker for up to $50 off your veterinary care plan per year. That's a year of unlimited vet visits for $82 a year. Your pets and your wallet will thank you. This is going to change the game, and we're proud to be partnered with them.
The Kennedy assassination broke this country. I really believe that. I know you do as well. But it broke something even more fundamental and opened up what they called the credibility gap under the Johnson administration, where prior to the 1960s, Americans trusted their government. It was actually a beautiful thing. I mean, it was bad in some ways as well. We were taken advantage of by the Dulles brothers and a lot of other horrible things they were doing in the 1950s. But it was beautiful in the sense of social and of civic trust.
Yes.
And there's something was broken with that, with the Kennedy assassination. And then it was extended, of course, into the war in Vietnam. And we've never been the same since. And all the Trump administration elected on the backs of a lot of these people who want more transparency in government, saw a lot of this corruption, to just turn around and do the same thing. It's just too much. It's too much for me, and I think it's too much for a lot of other people.
I remember thinking when Epstein killed himself, I never met Epstein, but I mean, he, knew everybody. I mean, I will say, in his, in the defense of people who got caught up in this because they went to dinner at Epstein's, like that George Stephanopoulos, for example, who I disagree with and everything, but I know George, and I don't think George was having sex with kids at Epstein's. Yeah. Epstein was, just part of the social fabric, right? And Trump knew him for that reason also. But when he killed himself, I remember thinking, people were like, he didn't kill himself. I was like, yeah, he probably killed himself. You know, he's in jail or whatever. His brother, Mark, called me a couple days after he killed himself. And so began this like 3-year-long conversation with Mark Epstein and looking into it in a way I never thought I would. He didn't kill himself.
Yeah.
He was murdered in his cell.
Yeah.
And I think that's really meaningful. It's the most secure federal lockup in the United States. How can that happen?
Well,
it can't
look at
happen
the
without
story.
state actors involved.
That's
okay?
right. Look at the story that we were told at that time. Part of the information dump here by the administration is some hours of footage. We were told that footage didn't exist. We were told that this was some guards who were, off. I think they
fell
were on
asleep.
duty. They fell asleep. None of it exists. And actually, it was all part of a screw up, and the camera angles wouldn't even be able to show anything. But that's why they're relatively confident. So where did this camera footage even come from?
Well, the camera footage doesn't even, first of all, it ends before they take his body out.
Right.
Why can't we see that?
Yep.
And the angle on it is absurd.
Yeah.
But the real question, just not to be pedantic, but the real question is, who are the other inmates on that cell block? So no one came in or out of the cell block. I think that's fair. It was the most secure cell block in that federal lockup in Manhattan. But who are the other inmates? And I went to Department of Prisons, which is part of DOJ, and asked, like, what are their names? Oh, we can't for privacy reasons. Really? These are people who can't vote or own a firearm?
Yes.
For the rest of their lives, but somehow they've got like a HIPAA law or something around who's a federal inmate? Fuck you, actually.
Yeah.
Sorry. It made me so mad because, of course, if Epstein was murdered, and it's very clear that he was murdered by another inmate.
That's right.
And we know that a bunch of them were transferred out of that unit right after he died. Who were they? Where are they now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why can't we get an answer to that question? So the whole thing that this tape shows that he didn't kill himself is like a joke. But worse than that, it's a joke that we all get. Like, they're not fooling anybody. So I feel like we're at a dangerous point now.
Yeah, I agree, because the lie is more the lie at this point is not even part of trying to convince any of this is true.
Yes.
The lie is a signal to everybody else involved in the scheme that to the ultimate ends, the United States government will go to protect all of you.
Yes.
And that's the for
Man,
what
is that smart.
purpose?
Can you say that again? Okay,
Yes.
so it's a signal.
The lie is not for you and me. The lie is for those implicated to say, no matter what, we will protect you. And then we have to start asking the question, why? As in, what is the purpose of this entire thing? Why does it matter that it happens right before the Israeli prime minister comes to Washington for the third time? As you said, what is the linkage here between those two? And the linkage is the fact that even a surface level view of Jeffrey Epstein, of the case, of the entire public record, reveals Alex Acosta, who said he belonged to intelligence. He said that. The person who was responsible for the sweetheart 13-month deal, Alex Acosta, who is the U.S. attorney, said, and I believe he testified this in sworn testimony, said, I was told he belonged to intelligence. That was a key part of why the charges were dropped against him, and he got some sweetheart Palm Beach County Jail situation where he was allowed to leave on the weekends, and why, even though I know you'll forgive George, but I actually won't. I don't have dinner with pedophiles. I'm not sure about you. I'm generally aware of the people who I am around, and if I can get invited to someone's house, I do cursory Google searches. That's generally what, I think that's normal.
Smart.
I don't want to be in the presence of people who I think are like genuinely evil. That's what I think. So for me, I actually can't forgive many of the media figures and the presidents, people like Bill Clinton, Kevin Spade, all these other high profile figures, specifically because it was all out in the public record. And then in particular, all of these high flying Wall Street financiers and Deutsche Bank, remember they were fined, I think it was the New York Financial Services. I read that entire report. It's one of the most extraordinary reports I've ever seen, because they specifically talk about how the bank ignored almost every single one of its own procedures that it would apply to any other client, and that at the highest levels, and remember, I think is the Barclays CEO, he's already been in trouble for this, for covering up much of this in one of the largest financial institutions in the entire world.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.